Back on the Disco Nova, we've been doing some body work and it's dusty. Everything is covered with dust. But we're not going to do body work today. I'm tired of it. Today we're going to do a little bit of work on this leak we got in the front. It's got a two-piece timing chain cover. And of course we got to pull the front end off, and no better time to do it than when you got the whole doghouse off the car. And we got a few parts to look at. We know we got a two-piece timing chain cover, so we've got this Chevrolet Performance Parts timing chain cover, which I guess as far as Chevrolet is concerned doesn't need to come with gaskets, so they didn't send any gaskets. I did have some water pump gaskets, but I do not have a paper timing chain cover gasket, but I can make it, so I'll just make it. Unless the other one stays stuck to the block, then we'll just put a little silicone on and put it back on. But we're leaking down here, so we got to drop the oil pan to slide this piece in. It did come with a new front seal. And we need to put the right shims in the water pump pulley because it's just got washers under it. Got door pins. We ordered some fender clips and bolts. We ordered 5/16, which is the 5/16 shaft. It's got a 1/2 inch drive on the top of it. It's got these clips. The clips are similar, but apparently in China, 5/16 means, I don't know, 6mm, and it's got a 10mm head. I guess they just said, what's a 5/16? Who knows? So just send them 10mm bolts, because nobody in America has a 10mm socket. So that's what we got. And we got this. We're also leaking around our tube that goes to our oil pressure gauge, so we're going to replace that plastic tube with copper. New filter. Got some, I guess, Evil Energy exhaust clamps, because I'm going to weld it to I'm going to weld this downpipe to the bottom of the header flange, and then we're going to put these removable clamps on, but I'm afraid they're not the right size. These are 2.5 inch inside diameter, and I don't think that pipe is 2.5 inch. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to cinch them all the way down. We'll see when we go put it together. It'll probably leak. They're made by Evil Energy. They're even engraved Evil Energy, so they're kind of interesting. Probably won't work, but we'll see. And I also have a leak in the transmission, so I think I've got, this was already in stock here. We had it in a bunch of junk. I think this is the rear seal that we need for the tail housing of the transmission. I believe this is the right one. So we'll go with that. And I guess the first thing I need to do is get started tearing the front of this motor off. I'm just going to leave the belt on until I get these loose. Then we'll loosen it up. Need me a little tray here. I'm looking for places to put my tools. Gee. That belt's on there. My chair is squeaking. I apologize for that. Guess I'll go ahead and take this pulley off. See if I can't locate me a tray to put my tools on. Well, dropped it in the oil pan anyway. Let's start by removing this. some washers back in there, but I ain't worried about dropping them because we had to make these washers to space this out, but I got some water pump spacers now, so, well, those are glued on there good. I don't think they're coming off. Huh. We may reuse them. It's not a bad idea if it works. Well, it's really on there. Now those have spacers behind them for the power steering pump. Gotta make sure we get those back to the right place. Now, I'm puzzled about how to tighten this power steering pump up. I don't know exactly how you do it because it seems like it just mounted in one spot. You gotta have somebody tighten this belt without taking the pulley off. You take the pulley off, you can't put the belt on tight. So there's a catch somewhere. I'll figure it out. Let's get this thing off here. Gee, it's seized up inside the spacer, feels like. So there's a short spacer and a long spacer. Shouldn't be, should be the same length. Let me get this off. This table's gonna fall off when I load it down with too much junk because it barely is on the stool. I've still got to get this off. Let me go ahead and take this lower pulley off, and I need to find something to fit that center 5/8, I believe. There's your 5/8 center bolt. It's only in there just a little ways. It's no good. It's the right crank washer though. Those are 9/16. See if this machine can do it. That's funny. Now these are a different thread than the other bolts I'm taking out, so I want to keep these all together. I get the pulley off here, I'll lay them inside the pulley. Lay this to the side. Keep it all together. Now I've got to figure this mess out. Really, I don't have to take. I should be able to lay it to the side if I can get these two bolts out and flip it back. I still need to know how to adjust this thing. I forgot how to adjust it. I know it's slotted behind here. I can feel it. It's got slots, but I can't tell how to tighten it up. It needs two belts on it too. It takes an oversized belt and a short belt, and otherwise it's just going to squeal all the time, which is what it's been doing. It's been squeaking. Let me round up my balancer puller here, and I'll try to get these two sleeves off. Chance to use my brown new vice grips. These are the actual brand. There's a lot of knockoffs out there, but it's really hard to beat the vice grips, which are now called Irwin vice grips. I don't know if it was always called that. What is in that? That looks like it's anise or something. There it went. Some kind of anise. I'll have to clean that off on the wire brush. I remember why it's on there. I put it on there to keep it from leaking. Following the threads out. Because it's leaking just as soon as I pulled it out. Makes sense. Thread sealer is all it is. Now, oh, here's another bolt. Little Allen head. Let's see. That doesn't go into the block, but it goes through. That's what holds the power steering pump on. Is there a nut back there? There's no nut. It threads into that rear bracket, but it's got to come out. Yay. See how good it's in there. We don't want to turn this over, but it's going to turn over. I just want to look at it and see what adjusts it. That's not supposed to be loose because it's got a seal on the back side of it. It's leaking too. Why am I not seeing the adjuster? That's bolted solid. That does not adjust. But this one does. And it's got plenty of slot left too, so it can adjust out of the way. Let me tie this out of the way here. Probably need to take that heater hose off, I suppose. It's off and it's draining. Wasn't much in it, really. That's more coming out of the block, I guess. Yeah, it's coming out of the block. It's not coming out of the water pump. Well, that come out of the water pump. Looks like we had 2 water pump gaskets on, maybe. Oh, just one. And a lot of silicone. Not too bad. That's off. Next thing is, one thing I really want to do is replace this. This is our fuel line, and it goes from middle to rubber. We must have just not had none that's got a fuel pressure regulator, which I hate. we thought that our flooding problem was the 7 pounds of pressure that produces was blowing the seats off, and the Holly on needs about 3 pounds. But I don't even know if that thing's necessary. I'm thinking about doing away with it, getting rid of the pressure regulator completely. And I think it's set up for a return. We don't have a return, so it doesn't really have nowhere to go, I guess. So I do have some of this line, I believe. I think I can bend some up and make it come up here and go to the filter and do away with this little rubber piece, which probably makes it boil anyway, and get that completely out of the picture. This is a harmonic balancer puller. It's got a tip on it so it doesn't damage your crank snout. It's also got these fine thread bolts, just like the ones we took out. Just sits right in here. Starchy bolts. You want to run these bolts in as far as you can. That way you make sure you don't damage the threads. And these sometimes are hard to get off. I think the last time I had this off, it was pretty rough. I don't think this is the right side. Whoops, that's the wrong direction. And of course, the battery went dead, so let's try this again. Can you see me? Let's see what happens here. This is a 3/4 ratcheting wrench. And hopefully the engine won't start turning over. If it does, we have a remedy for that too. So I can keep it on there. Afraid it's gonna slip, make me mash my fingers, which happens. That's part of mechanicking, I guess. I think it's moving. These are press fit, and I have this same kit comes with a tool to press it back on. Just take it nice and slow. You can use an impact on these. I wouldn't recommend it. Impact is hard on your, I see people using impacts. It's hard on your tools. It's hard on the threads on these tools. Some are made to be used with an impact. These cheaper ones, which is not really a cheaper one. This is a name brand, but it's still made out of raw Chinesium. It's coming off there, slowly but surely. It's moved maybe a 1/2 inch. You don't want to watch me crank this all day. We'll come back. Okay, it's loose. I'm gonna get these back out. Now we've got that put away. Looks good. It's not, no grooves cut in it. It's really nice. At least that part was working. Now we're down to see what's really going on. Looks like it's been leaking all around the front here. That shiny stuff there is water. It's coming out of there, coming out of the block. But you can't just take these bolts out. Well, you can this one, because this is a 2-piece timing chain cover. So you can take these bolts out and take this front cover off and not affect the bottom pan. But we're going to take that inner piece off. Maybe. Yeah, we definitely have to take it out. We got to take some bolts out in the bottom of the pan. I'll go ahead and take this front cover off first. Put that timing marker back on there. It's already adjusted for our balancer. Not very tight. Now, I've had this off a few times. One of the reasons I had it off is I had a, what would you call it, a gear drive in it, like a Jessel type, not Jessel, not the belt drive, it was a gear drive. And the gear drive was just so noisy. We couldn't stand it anymore. We ended up taking it out. Let's see if we can pop this off of here. It may just be leaking, because the problem with this 2-piece timing chain cover is it only has bolts to here. And there's nothing down here keeping this pressed up against that, because there's another liner in there that presses against it. So it's really hard to get it to seal. We've had trouble with this in the past, and we put a 2-piece on here just in case we wanted to fool around with the camshafts. I'll have to get something to get that off there with. I use my tail UGG gasket scraper. Tail UGG. Well, we're not going to reuse that gasket. It's definitely done for. Now behind this there's another layer of steel. That's not usual for these, but this other layer of steel goes into the bottom. It's the one that's got the lip on it, because that's what makes this a 2-piece timing chain cover. And it's not a very good one. We do have our double roller timing chain. It's still, of course, there's probably not 1,000 miles on this car, even though it's got oil everywhere, because I have run it pretty hard. And that's belt. All this dust is belt. That's not, there's oil there, but that's all from belt being ground up somewhere. Probably one of these rubber hoses laying on top of the alternator, if I had to guess. There's the numbers on this block. I'm not sure what they translate to. Let's see. I see upside down C. Looks like CTC. CTC. I don't know what that is. I know it's a 350 block. That's all I know. It's not original. This is a crate motor. Weird numbers. Looks like CTC. Okay, according to, I guess, SS-Z28 or NastyZ28.com, there's 3 CTCs, and I've just lost it. There it is. One of them's 1978 305, 145 horsepower. I know it's not 305. 1970 350, 320 horsepower, 4-barrel. Or CTC 1970 350, 360 horsepower, 4-barrel LT1. Now, this is a crate motor, and it's probably been decked. So those stampings on there probably don't mean anything. I would like to think that it was a 360 horsepower core. I know it's bored. I believe it's 30 over on the pistons. So it's 355 cubic inch. Of course, that's only the bottom end. We know it's got Pro Max heads. We know it's got the bigger intake, bigger carburetor. I think it's I don't know. I think it's a 770 carburetor that's on it. It's probably way too big for this motor. This motor is probably, at the very best, 300 horsepower. But it's still cool to know that it's got a halfway decent block. But it doesn't say whether they're 4-bolt mains or not. And forget the idea that it's a 305, because it's absolutely not a 305. Well, here we go. Okay. Z28. CTC. I don't know if that's 4-barrel or 2-barrel. I guess it's, we go to the top and see what it says. I'm doing a lot of scrolling. Okay, it's barrels. It doesn't say, it doesn't have whether it's 4-bolt or 2-bolt on it. But it's pretty cool that it's got a suffix code on it. But it doesn't really mean anything because it is a crate motor core. But it's probably a late to early 70s engine. But we got it right. It come from AutoZone, I believe, where we ordered this from. It was really nice when we got it, but we took the heads off, got rid of those immediately, and put these on there. And I'm regretting that. It probably had some really good heads on it, because I believe we were looking for a 300 horsepower engine, so it would have had good heads on it to start with. So I probably messed up putting these old cheap Pro Max on there, but they're decent heads. I just can't find headers to fit them. So now we gotta get into the oil pan and loosen it up. Up front here is some 1/2-inch bolts. If I can get on them. And they're pretty tight. So it's not leaking because the oil pan's loose. Definitely tight. These have got to drop down pretty far in front. And it's got one of them reusable gaskets. They're all one piece. It's got a one-piece oil pan gasket on it. So we ought to be able to drop this down and tighten it back up with no issues. Maybe. I don't believe I want to take these completely out. I'm just going to get them where I can get these ears of this thing loose. That's 7/16, I believe. See if we can get the ratchet back in there. And that's a 3/8 socket. That's 7/16. I took that all the way out. I didn't mean to. Let me get these out and I'll get back with you. There's that second ring that's on there. It's on these pins, these alignment pins. Now we gotta get it out in this oil pan. Get this oil pan dropped down a little. If it's gonna drop down or not, we may have to take some more bolts out. Those are out pretty good. All right. I'm gonna destroy this getting it out, but I don't really care. It leaks anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and take these front bolts out, I believe. I'll probably take the front 3 out on each side. Kind of easy to do when there's no front end. I'll come back in a second. Now I've got it down quite a bit. The gasket's still stuck, but the pan's down. Try to get this gasket loose without destroying it. I do have another one, but I definitely don't want to take the oil pan out. That means jacking the engine up slightly. There we go, it's coming down now. Oh boy. say she was leaking. Right out the front. So that's the end of the, magnetic. That's the end of the 2-piece one. I bent it up anyway. It's junk. Now I've got to somehow reproduce this gasket. Shouldn't be not that big of a deal, but I gotta get all this cleaned up. We clean this up and we'll get back together when we're working on the gasket. Don't have one of these carbide scrapers. This one's made by Titan, but there's other brands out there. They got a little carbide tip and you can drag them. Now you only want to do this on steel. It probably destroy aluminium because it's really short. But it's doing real good on this iron block. It's got 2 sides, so you can use both sides to scrape. It's not leaving no gouges in, it's just taking the gasket off. It's working pretty good. I like it. It's like using sandpaper without sandpaper. I'm getting a lot of water running down here. It's coming out of this, so I'm going to use this Swedish-made enlarger pump thingy to draw some of this water out to get it down below this hole here. And first I got to figure out how to work it. Oh, gee. How does this work? There we go. Well, I was over here jawing away with you guys, and of course the camera was off. But I got the timing cover over here, and I got some gasket paper out. And all I got to do is scoot the gasket paper down to where these edges is. And then, of course, I need to pull this back out. Push it up there as tight as I can against those edges. And then draw the outline and draw my little circles. And then before I cut it out, I can use a hole punch and punch my bolt holes. Let me draw this out and we'll get back and look at it. Now, I just used my metal ruler here and I measured over. I used the centimeters for all my un-American friends. I went 2 centimeters over and that gave me my inside line to draw out. You can't really see it. I got a blue pen and gray paper. But I'll just connect these dots right through here, and I got a hole punch kit that I'll go through and pull me some hollows out of there, and I'll make some hollow punches. I got a wooden table, so it should punch right up. Now I've used my hole punch and punched all my holes out. It just goes on the end of this hammer thing, and it saves all the paper things up in there. That's spring loaded. I'm gonna have to force them out of there. But now all I gotta do is, now that I've got all my holes cut, is either take a razor blade or take a pair of scissors and cut along my lines and get this cut completely out. I'll probably do scissors and cut the middle first. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Now when you're cutting this stuff, I started from the top and cut my way around. That way I'm not trying to start at the edge and get off somewhere else. So I'll start at the top of this piece and I'll work my way around to each side. I'll probably cut this little edge off first and then work my way around. That way it's just, you got more to hold on to while you're cutting it. That's the whole purpose of it. And I just cut it out with a razor knife. I had this Milwaukee Fastback in my pocket, which is handy. It's got a screwdriver in one end with 2 bits, 1/4 inch nut driver too, and then a quick change razor blade. So I've got it cut out. Now it's time to do a little fit. May have to have a little bit of trimming. I don't see anything it can interfere with. Looks like it's going to fit on there nicely. So it has to come down. I know it's going to come down to the edges of the pan. So let's put this one on here. You guys can't see me, but okay, yeah. It's going to fit nicely. This is a little bit thicker than the stuff that you'll get in the kit too, this gasket. It may show a little bit around the edges. I don't think it's going to interfere with the water pump. Those gaskets are going to fit in there nice. And we should be able to put a little bit of silicone down here on these raw edges. Pull the pan down, put some silicone in it. Put a little on top and bottom of this blue gasket, which it doesn't need it. It's not supposed to. It's a silicone gasket. So it should be just fine. Should work perfectly. I got off my line a little bit there, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that big of a deal. If we get into trouble when we go to put it on, we'll trim it. I just don't think it's going to be an issue. So let's move on. Here's our installation tool. It has a threaded end on it. That's 7/16 by 20 on this particular motor. You thread this into this long bolt. It's got a lock nut on it. And it's best to use a installation tool on these harmonic balancers. I'm going to use some pliers and tighten this lock nut up. If you don't tighten that lock nut, you stand a chance of leaving this inside there, and it'd be hard to get out once the balancer's on. Then it's just got a big like washer, not a washer but a bearing. Has a bearing, and then this nut, the end of this is 9/16, and then this is an 1.25 inch nut. So first thing we want to do is grab our harmonic balancer. Lay this tool somewhere, and it's keyed. I want to clean this up. It's keyed. It has a key in it, and it's on the bottom of the crank right now. So you want to move it around till you find that key and start it on. It's started on there. Then you just thread this in to the end of the crank. You don't want to bottom it out. If you run this in there and bottom it out, it's hard to get back out. I back it off a little. I bottomed it out, backed it off just a little bit. If you don't get that nut getting tight on the end of it there, that lock nut, you get in all kinds of trouble. Hold this right here where it is and start running this nut in. It drives that. You can see that pulley walking on that balancer. You have to run this in until it bottoms out. Now I really recommend one of these tools. If you just start beating the balancer on there, you can mess up the rubber in between the balancer and the main pulley, the main center. And you can do all kinds of damage. You can damage the end of your crank, you can damage your balancer. You can do a lot of stuff, a lot of damage that's unnecessary. And these aren't very expensive. These are, you can rent them at the parts houses and then take them back and get your money back. But if you're going to do a lot of this, they're worth the investment, because these are kind of hard to get on. These are friction fit, and they're meant to be so they don't leak. Got to look and see how it's going in there. Looks like it's going in our seal okay. See, this is still loose. This pan is still loose, so it can move itself around without folding that lip in. It's getting stiff. Got a ways to go yet. Now I may have to use a wrench to tighten those timing chain cover bolts behind there, but it'll be worth it because you know that it's went on centered, and I'm blocking you guys out. Now I hit bottom right there. It's not going any further. That's as far as it's going to go. I need to back this off. Back that off. We should be able to thread this out. And hopefully our center bolt is still in the end of this. If it's not, they're hard to get out. It's still there. So the lock nut kept it in place. The old one that I got didn't have a lock nut on it. And it would come out in there just about every time. So I got another one. I think I ended up welding this part to this part. But so after that, it would only fit Chevrolet. So I had to have another one. But that worked out pretty good. Spend a minute or two tidying up here a little bit. And the main reason you want to do that, one for looks and mainly because you want to be able to see if you're leaking again. And I think possibly it might be blowing out a little bit around this china wall here. That's a possibility. But I got it cleaned up. I got the oil pan back on underneath the car. I spared you any of that because me crawling under the car is quite comical. It probably would have been funny to see, but it's hard to get up under there. And I make a lot of unnecessary noises, like the sinking of the Titanic. I'm sure it sounds the same. So, all right, everything's back on there. Now it's time to get ready for the water pump and try to figure something out about this power steering pump over here and try to get it tight. Let's see. Yeah, I'll probably put the water pump on first. See how that goes. You're going to have to use some type of thread sealant on these bolts. And Teflon or something. And I've got something cruddy all over these. We'll have to get cleaned out here. I've got some, well, poop. I dropped my book. I've got some Loctite I'm going to try, thread sealant. I've never used it. I use it on hydraulics. It seems to work pretty good. So I'm going to try it on this. See what it do. If I can get all that goo out of there that came out of the inside of it. I think I'm going to put it on the whole boat. The reason you put thread sealant on these is these opens up right into the water jackets of the engine. I'm going to get these started, then I'm going to drip a little more down in there probably. Put some more in there. Too much is not enough, more is better. Here's my 9/16. Now I've got to put these steering brackets on this other side, so I'm going to get this set up. Wrong size. Now I keep picking the wrong ones up. It's gonna water out if I ain't careful. Right into the water. Right where it belongs. Oh boy. Now we made this look way easy. It's because it is. The reason it is because with the whole front end's off the car. Now you notice I left this fuel line off because I've got a braided, I couldn't find the steel line, but I'm gonna have to cut the steel line anyway to make it work with this filter and stuff. So I've got a braided line that's coming. Hopefully it'll keep some temperature off of this. And we'll just run it from the fuel pump up to here. And I may move this, or I'm gonna get rid of this stuff because this is laying right on the alternator. That hot alternator melts through that, we'll have a wonderful fire. We don't want that for no amount of money. These little fine thread bolts is kind of hard to start in this balancer. Well, didn't need that. There's one. Dose. Now that's in there. Where'd our 9/16 bolt go? It's on the ratchet somewhere. This thing doesn't put them very tight, even though it looks like it's salging them down there pretty good. It doesn't do them real tight. Don't want to go real tight on these fine thread anyway. Get this center bolt in. And it's supposed to torque to something, but I couldn't tell you what. But I need to figure it out. Trust me, I will come back and torque it. Probably not right now, but I probably will torque it. That's not time, but we will torque it down. I think they torqued to like 75 pounds or something. But don't quote me on that. So now we got the belts and the alternator bracket. We got to figure out how to loosen this stinking power steering pump up. Stay tuned.